But next up, we've got the casters standing by for set number 2.
Thanks a lot, Hindu Man. Tom Badger standing here with Taco. We've got set number 2, like you said. It's going to be Flashpoint versus Noble. Again, like we saw in set number 1, a very big statement game. How it was a barometer of how these teams are really performing. I think this one is also going to be a good look as we take a look towards Noble, who has been a team that has surprised a couple of people, I think. But in general, I kind of get what I'm expecting.
Noble is one of those teams where they've been looking for their footing and have somewhat seemed like they're finding it now. But Flashpoint, on the other hand, we haven't really seen a whole lot out of them just yet. They've had some pretty close sets, but not really able to finish off a game, pick up a victory for themselves, which is bit unfortunate, but at the same time, this could really go either way when it comes to Flashpoint versus Noble, and it's a lot fair, I think, of a match. Really get a telling of how these teams are going to fare up against each other.
That's a good point. Flashpoint, I think here, everybody's trying to just improve, right? This is a roster of folks that either have had their chance and have taken a step back or haven't had their shot just yet. So everybody's trying to really improve. Noble, on the other hand, same sort of situation. You've got 2 players that played last year and they didn't do much. You've got 2 players that played from console last year. And then, of course, MLC Stealth stepping in here had his struggles as well. So both of these teams are really just comprised of players that are trying to find that next step, and I think this match specifically will be a really good barometer, like I said before, as to where these teams are at. Terra is the first pick for Flashpoint Esports. I mean, she's gone up and down in popularity, but first pick?
She's definitely a character who's been making a new storm nowadays, who wasn't really too high in favor because of the whole lack of early pressure.
Right.
But at the same time, I think teams have figured out a little bit more of how to utilize her kit and really make her shine in these sustaining kind of comps. Noble, on the other hand, going with some classics over here. Janus for the MLC and Batz for what I'm sure will be Chapo.
Yeah, I mean, of course, Hun Batz can play different positions, but traditionally a jungler here. Chapo on the Hun Batz, it's interesting. Almost a, I don't want to say it's not a Chapo style god because we've seen him do fantastically on it, but when I think Chapo, I think heavy aggression, more traditional assassin, and so it's really a depiction of how he's started to play for the team that started, I think, last year on the console. Zeus and Bacchus and Terra, Flashpoint Esports, very classic combination of just kill him real fast.
There's a lot of AoE coming out on the side of Flashpoint, and a lot of synchronization that could come through with the Bacchus ultimate into the Terra route lockdown for the Zeus ult to really try and shine. But at the same time, I'm really liking the comfort pick that Noble has seemed to opt for. Like you said, we're more accustomed to seeing Chapo on heavily aggressing kind of junglers, but you can see that Flashpoint opted to go ahead and ban away the Circuit immediately, and I think that was a smart decision by them because that's definitely a character that he's been favoring lately, and now Noble has the option with picking up the bot so early to just go ahead and try and take off as many junglers that they feel like would be an issue as soon as possible.
Kumbhakarna taken up by Noble Esports. Kumbha is a character that he's never really #1 in the meta, but he feels like it's always an option. I don't think there was ever a situation where Kumbha was a bad pick, but he's never really been #1. He just has so much peel.
He's probably one of the most annoying supports in the game. He's not necessarily, like you mentioned, the greatest, but at the same time, when you combine it with a heavy CC comp, and they have the bots already coming through, which will be annoying enough as is, having that ultimate, especially with a little bit of CDR, and then he's just all over the place with that ultimate. But Cupid Kumbha is a pretty strong combination, I think. That's a wombo combo for sure, just as much as Flashpoint's got the setup with the Awilix and the Bacchus.
You have the knock-up right into the fields of love down there for Cupid, so the player can't actually escape. And then one of my favorite tricks, which you're probably not really going to see, is Cupid hits the heart bomb the minion, and then Kumbha launches that minion towards the player, and they get stunned out. That's a lot of fun. We'll see if that's the direction Noble Esports are going to go. Flashpoint Esports versus Noble. We'll take it here in game #1. And as we get into it, things I want to mention, you might notice a different player. Dr. Draylo, the coach for Noble here, will be taking the spot of Wowy, who's unavailable for at least game #1. We'll keep an eye on that to see if he joins us a little bit later. But so that should be the only change here. Everything else is as it was before. Draylo, the coach, playing in the support position. And you mentioned before that if you had to have Draylo sub in, this is probably where you want him to.
Draylo's not unkeen to Smite. He can play at a higher level. He's definitely familiar with the role. And if anything, this is actually the role that he prefers to play in, is support. So I don't think that it'll be too noticeable of a difference. He does know the team fairly well, and they're gonna have synergy. And if anything, maybe he'll get to have some fun having a little bit of shot calling potential now.
Yeah, you know, I always, it's always very interesting when a coach joins a team on the, in the boots, if you will, because you're used to your coach sort of watching the game and then yelling at you after when you mess up. Now your coach is here in the thick of things, right? So you got to really be careful of that. At the same time, you also get to meme your coach if he dies.
DJ Zeus making some noise, by the way. I completely forgot about the sound effects on that Zeus launch into the center, and I was trying to figure out where that was coming for a second. And then I realized Incon's just trying to have his own little dance party. But Xeno and Shadowq over there looks like they're just going to go ahead and strip away the buff from Cupid since he's been left on his own there. But I'm sure Wowy's pretty all right with that. He's getting solo farm, which is making up for the fact that he's going to be losing the buffs on that side of the lane. And plus, Chapo and Uzzy are probably going to be looking to do a little bit of invade on that side, on the solo side of the map.
I said this the last time. Wowy is becoming the perennial Cupid player. We have a couple of hunters that have made Cupid sort of their a flavor pick for them, but no hunter ever in the SPL has been known for their Cupid first and foremost. So I think it's very interesting to see Wowy to come through and have this god be his character.
It's definitely a character that I wouldn't really have expected for him because of his playstyle. And MLC Stealth wasn't expecting to fall right there. Mirage going ahead and picking up the first blood.
Just big surprise plays. Chapo joins his support underneath the tower. But yeah, MLC Stealth taking the early spill, just slowly ticked down. You saw a little bit of damage come out from Shadowq, a little bit of damage come out from Incon, a little bit of damage from Mirage, and that's where it caught him. As soon as the Feather Stem hits you, I think A, it hit him for more damage than he anticipated, and B, that half a second of CC is all you need. Uzzy gets controlled for half a second, and he's gone as well. Second kill for Flashpoint, and that'll open up the map for Noble to at least get the Oracles on the left side. But right now, because of the 2 kills, Flashpoint up by almost 1,000.
Noble have to really be a lot more careful inside the jungle and even in the laning phase right now, because if you look at the draft coming out of Flashpoint in comparison to Noble, there is a lot of early pressure on the side of Flashpoint, especially with that Awilix Zeus combination. Yeah. Even the Bacchus flop is great CC setup for his team, and then on top of that, in case you ever wanted Aquarius to rotate over just to, drop the CC as well, like we watched happen to Uzzy taking the spill in the solo lane, it lines up, and eventually it can be pretty devastating. And if they're not careful, Flashpoint could certainly snowball with this one.
Absolutely. You're really going to have to keep an eye on those beads on the side of Noble. You can see stealth speeds are actually down despite the fact that he died. And you've got 2 other sets that are off cooldown for the moment, but definitely for the moment with the amount of CC that you just highlighted. So Noble certainly have to be a little bit careful. Chapo, on the other hand, wants to make sure that XenoTronics has to be careful. The ultimate's going to grab Chapo. Uses the beads to get out of there. And the Fear No Evil kind of just tossed out there on a whim. I think Chapo was trying to aim that totem a little bit better, but it just wasn't executed right.
And you can see the counter gank that's coming through right now from Mirage. Not going to opt to use his ultimate there, but he doesn't need to. The damage is more than enough, and Wowy's already down for the count, and there goes Chapo falling right next to him.
Smooth, clean rotation coming out from Flashpoint. That's exactly what you want. And night and day from last week, honestly. Flashpoint last week, it looked like a team that was... a lot of people just call it ranked mentality. Individual players just doing their own individual thing. This is the Flashpoint that I think a lot of people need to see. The team is working together as a unit, opens up the Gold Fury, classic Smite play. Flashpoint already up to about a 2,000 gold lead, give or take. 4 kills up in 4 minutes. That's incredible.
The gold lead is probably the more important part as well than the kill count even, because you can see kills and, not really see a goal difference, but Noble is losing so much map pressure and so much farm early on. They're having to play a little bit more passive after taking those early spills. Their jungle is probably going to keep getting invaded off the rotations, and it's just going to be really difficult, I think, for Chapo to try and keep up early on, especially on the bots, especially with his beats down already. And Mirage knows this is kind of just easy pickings, and who do we want to scare and try and force something out of? Because even if Shadowq lands a flop onto somebody, that doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to Awilix ult every time. It's all up in the air right now, and that's probably the scarier part for Noble.
Up in the air. I get you.
Hey.
Oh my God, she did the finger guns. Can we aggro? Oh man, I'm just surrounded by foreheads over here. This is what my life has become. But really, looking at Flashpoint last week, I mean, this was a team Mirage was afraid to gank. He did not want to engage whatsoever. Incon walked into the jungle by himself, just repeatedly getting smoked out. Xeno had no impact in the games whatsoever. And all like 4 or 5 minutes into this match, a lot has changed. And right away when I saw this Flashpoint roster, I called them Flashpoint University. Right, I saw 4 players, I mean 5, Shadowq even included, but Shadow's really the professor here. It's Shadow's job to be the teacher and take these 4 players under his wing and sort of create a winning atmosphere. And, you know, knowing the way Shadowq works, I almost feel like the first couple of weeks, his idea was just play Smite, and we'll assess the situation after the fact. And seeing them come into here, there was absolutely some improvement done with specifics in mind. Flashpoint really realized that they need to play as a unit, and I think that's what we're seeing already.
I feel like the players are also just playing a lot more confidently than what we've seen from them in the past couple of sets that they've played and been able to show themselves off for. We've seen them playing a way more passive, but I mean, pretty strong performance overall.
Do you think that has to do with the opposition? Now that they're against Noble, a team that they're quote unquote supposed to be able to beat, as opposed to some of the stronger opposition, is that the mindset?
I wouldn't consider a Noble as a team that they're supposed to beat. I mean, we just saw Noble take a phenomenal set off of, you know, last Thursday and everything like that, and it was incredible watching Noble perform then. And even still, I don't think that Noble is one of those teams that people are expecting to just roll over and die. I think that they're a team now that people recognize as a threat. And if anything, that would probably encourage Flashpoint to try and play better because they know that Noble can be better. Right.
So the idea that their opposition, they're not supposed to beat them per se. I think that was the wrong choice of words, but they're within grasp, right?
Yeah.
Flashpoint Esports going up against, you know, the likes of you know, some of the top end teams in memory of Gabe against Team Eager. Maybe right there, the team doesn't feel as confident, right? And I mean, you speak as a player yourself, that can really get into your mindset when you're in a competitive setting.
You can also kind of just tell whenever players aren't really feeling each other and whenever somebody seems to be a little bit out of it. Mirage, for instance, has been running around this map nonstop with Shadowq or somebody else on the team, ensuring that he's picking up all this farm. But Mirage is making plays that we aren't really familiar with him seeing. If anything, we would see him go into like tower dives and just, he might 1-for-1 trade, he might not, but either way, that's his play style.
That was I mean, going back, there was a specific game on Nemesis that everybody remembers, right? Last year on Noble. But yeah, I mean, that's his play style, very aggressive. And here on the Awilix, I mean, we've known a number of players that we love to watch. Players like Chapo here in this game, players like Zapman that were extremely aggressive, that found success after they curtailed that aggression just a little bit. They're still aggressive players, but they slowed it down a little bit. And I think that's what Mirage is learning to do, mayhaps at the suggestion of Shadowq.
Speaking of aggression, it could get him in a little bit of trouble here. Shadowq with an excellent flop to get him out of trouble, and Stealth is going to end up falling down instead.
Through the wall, he actually gets away, but the detonate knows no bounds. Incon finds his second kill of the game. Great turnaround for Incon, another player who really just didn't have a strong impact last week, and all of a sudden here looks completely different against a Noble team that, you know, they came in with little to no expectations, and like you said, people very quickly realizing that they're a strong unit, Uzzy included. He's going to combat the 3-on-1 with just popping the ultimate.
These early on Bacchus flops have been absolutely on point, and Shadowq not only forcing out actives with them, but the damage. Yeah. I think people forget a lot of times just how much damage that Bacchus can do, even without the pen boots. He opted for the CDR, but I kind of prefer the CDR here with the way that he's playing it, because he's just spamming that flop whenever it's available.
On cooldown, just going for it, absolutely. And it's funny, Shadowq has garnered the reputation of a defensive style support, right? One of these Geb style type guys, but you know, Shadowq's been playing for a long time, part of the what I call the original dynasty of Smite, the old Dignitas crew that Anatolia actually played for, right? And Shadowq was support there, and he was known for, sure, his Aphrodite, but his Bacchus as well caused a lot of problems. Watching them play against Jeff Hindla, I mean, it was always a fight for who gets the Bacchus when it was them versus Denial, and Shadowq was able to really create the situation where his team follows him around, he flops everybody, and then hopefully they fall over. That's the exact strategy we're seeing here 3 years later.
Also, with the way that Shadowq has been playing this Bacchus with so many rotations early on, it's been leaving XenoTronics alone in that dual lane to solo farm. And early on, Medusa versus Cupid, that could really go either way, but it seems like Xeno's really been getting the better end of this trade. He's been consistently poking out Wowy on that Cupid ADC, a couple of times forcing him underneath his tower. And the way that he's responded to the one gank that Chapo tried to pull off was executed perfectly, using the ultimate in order to avoid the Cupid stun, and then having his bead still prepared for the bot's ultimate. That's great A play that you want to see from your hunter. Yeah,
that's kind of what people expected out of XenoTronics, his lackluster season on LG. Or that's even unfair to say. It was. I famously said pretty average, right? It was an average season. Obviously, they wanted to move in a different direction, but coming to his natural position of hunter is really the key here. And you know, Medusa, you're kind of expected to go ahead as long as you're not trapped by the ult. You're expected to win that trade. So I kind of like how that one's going as well. Xeno making his rotation. Speaking of which, he's gonna get caught out by draylo. Pops the yawn and should just catch the snake woman right there.
Classic Kumbha scenario.
Yep,
just even if you think that you might have him out of position for a second, he's just gonna mez and then run away.
Yeah, just that's what we were saying. We said this god is annoying, right? I mean, he can, and also one of the things about Kumbhakarna is that he also provides a real large amount of damage too. You don't really expect it until you land from that epic uppercut, and you're half HP, and somebody else is gonna meet you at the bottom as well, of course, with some follow-up damage. So.
Baits with the passive are also a very real thing. A lot of people don't necessarily anticipate it. They just think, what is this guy doing? Why is he so out of position? And then the next thing you know, you have 4 people around you as you're trying to pick up the last hits on that passive, and then you're just like, oh.
They set us up. Somebody actually utilized, set up an ambush here correctly, and now I'm absolutely smoked out. Shadowq misses the jump that time around, and he's going to beat up draylo instead. Wowy shows up on the left-hand side. Incon deciding where he wants to go. Heads back over, but Stealth wants to get aggressive just for a little bit.
And you can see Wowy's really starting to get hurt here, but Chapo going in with the engage on the Shadowq, pretty heavy. Incon picking up immediately with ultimate, and there's just ultimates popping off everywhere. Shadowq first to fall. Uzzy picked up by Incon, and what a catastrophe in that jungle.
Xeno picking up draylo on the backside, just barely picking up that kill. Not going to allow the stand-in sub to get much out of there. 7-1 as Flashpoint clean up that team fight with a 1-2 trade. The Gold Fury topples as well. 12:40 on the clock here, folks. And Noble Esports are trailing by a significant amount already. 6,000 gold so far. That do more on the Janus. Not working out so much. 2 dead so far, but really, I wanted to point out what was going wrong for Noble. I mean, honestly, I think it's just a lack of jungle presence.
It's hard for bots to really get rolling into a composition so snowbally like Awilix and Zeus. That's probably the biggest, like, intrusive factor for them is how do we engage into a jungle that's consistently being invaded when there's just no way we can outdamage these guys early on.
And also when you look at the Fear No Evil, I love this ability and I love this character because he excels at the counter engage, which is honestly usually a better look for most of these teams out here if you find that follow-up. But the problem with characters like Awilix and Zeus is that there is no counter engage because once they engage on you, you're already dead. Bacchus flops in, you have 2 stacks of Zeus nonsense on you, he hits the detonate, and before you can drop that Fear No Evil and fight back into it, it's a 5-on-4 at the very least because of the burst damage at a flashpoint. So Batz excels at sort of fighting back, but he has problems against these burst compositions.
The issue here is Chapo probably needs to be the engaging factor for Noble because if he doesn't pop off that ultimate at the very start, he's probably not going to get a good chance to pop it off in the mid or even late stage of that fight because by then, like you mentioned, it'll be too late. Somebody's going to have already died and the team will already be at a disadvantage. So really, it's risky for him. I would like to see him opt to maybe pick up a Spirit's Robe or a Mantle of Discord even if he's going to be that initiating factor. But if that's not the case, I just feel like he's not going to get as much utility out of this bot ult as they would want. And a large part of their comp is relying around this as well because they do have more of a counter-engage composition.
Exactly. Yeah, they're looking to bite back, but you know, unfortunately, the damage is already done when they go into it. I love this play coming out from Flashpoint. They put 3 players strong in the mid lane, trying to push up on the tower, and they send Shadowq and Aquarius out to sort of zone on the right side jungle. So it's a damned if you do, damned if you don't situation for Noble. Either they defend the tower and lose their jungle, or they defend the jungle and lose their tower. Here, they're going to lose their solo laner. Uzzy gets body blocked after the pull, goes with the ultimate, but the belly flop and the damage from the Hunter, too strong. Draylo in the same situation, drops the uppercut, walks out through the portal, but the rest of Flashpoint already doing the business. Incon with the successful light show takes out 2, and Aquarius picks out another one. 4 players dead on the side of Noble. The only one alive, the coach, and he's certainly yelling.
I can't even imagine what's going on through the comms in that kind of scenario. It's just one of those instances where Uzzy's out of position, Uzzy gets picked, that's fine, and then out of seemingly nowhere, Flashpoint just pick up everybody else as well. That Zeus ult is swinging, and they're already going to be looking at Fire Giant 16 minutes?
This is, this is domination, Taka. 11-1, right? You're looking at 11-1, almost a 10,000 gold lead. They take out the Fire Giant and then take out the Portal Demon. It's kind of backwards, but I'm not judging. And right there, this is one of those rare situations where I actually do wish I had the John Madden Telestrator up here, because that was such an interesting play coming out from Flashpoint. Like I said, they had 3 players in the middle lane, and Shadowq zoning out on the right-hand side. And then the wave comes in, and the 3 players in the mid lane start to push on the tower, but it's immediately wiped out by Noble. So they no longer have that backdoor protection. So you see the whole set slide to the left, and Shadowq comes over here on the in the mid lane, and the rest of the 3 go into that left side jungle looking for the buffs. They pick up the buffs, and like you said, Uzzy comes around looking for like the Vamana 5-man knockup, but instead just gets turned on, and everybody else from Noble tries to respond to the invade on the left side of the buffs, but because of the beautiful sort of like guillotine reaction coming out from Flashpoint, Noble just walked into a trap. It was just wonderful positioning. Oh my goodness, I would watch that 7 times.
Dropping a Zeus ultimate and a Bacchus ultimate in such a small space as well. There's really just no way to avoid any of that damage. Uzzy, I mean, he knew he was in the wrong neighborhood, but the rest of Noble was really not anticipating that.
Yeah, I mean, that like I said, that was just a smooth transition that Flashpoint was able to make, just a swing from the right to the left, and that's why they caught so many people out there. And that was, make no mistake about it, that was 100% by design. Flashpoint, I mean, Shadowq understands the fact that the geometry of the map is very important. I've spoken to him about this before, way back in the day. But understanding that nooks and crannies are going to help out certain... Oh my goodness.
That's just...
That's a play that Chapo makes on other players.
Yeah.
Chasing behind the tier 2 all the way to the Phoenix. That's the play that Chapo makes. I mean, there was a famous highlight where Chapo's fighting by the mid harpies. Oh,
and he kills Ghost inside the fountain. Yeah, I remember that.
The Apollo
one.
ults home, and Chapo just runs on through, playing the Awilix, surprisingly enough. But here, I mean, that's that hyper aggressive, I'm going to kill you no matter what play. That's Chapo brand. Mirage just borrowing it here, and that one's got to hurt. This one has to hurt Noble as well. A team that, like I said, very few people had high expectations for. They come into this season, surprise a lot of people, informed and otherwise. And here, this game, complete turnaround from the success that they've seen recently. How do you think this is going to affect the squad overall?
Overall, I would really just like to see them bounce back from this in game number 2. Maybe look for a draft that isn't as mid to late game oriented, because I think that's where a lot of this went wrong for them, is considering that they opted Cupid. Sure, he's got great early presence, but Batz is kind of questionable when you're up against a Zeus and a Awilix. Mostly, it just, a lot of it falls down onto the 3-man composition, support mid jungle, and overall, Flashpoint just had the stronger one, and it just led to better results for them in the long run.
Big play coming out here. Frenzy popped in the last-ditch effort from Noble here to defend their tier 2. Looking to work out. Uzzy tried to zone out on the right-hand side of the Hunter, but Mirage is the first one on the board. XenoTronics answers, and he takes down Uzzy. That's not going to be a zone. Draylo is already half dead. There's the final hit, and 15 kills on the board. Incon, the mid-mage, makes sure that the surrender comes out. 19. Well done coming out from these guys. I mean, just different level of play coming out from Flashpoint. We have yet to see that all season.
No, Flashpoint definitely showed up in that game number 1. Granted, Noble did have the sub with draylo, but at the same time, I feel as though Noble still could have played that a little bit differently, a little bit stronger, and I wouldn't put all the blame onto draylo or like a lack of synergy or anything like that. That was mostly just early picks got caught out, and then Flashpoint just snowballing off of it because that's what their comp was for. It was early snowball, and they ran away with it.
I have no issue with what draylo played there. There was no problem coming out from the support, so looking towards a substitute is not the question here. I think it comes down to the jungle selection. We'll head to